Start with the Women's Basketball National Championship. Congratulations to Dawn Staley's Gamecocks. For Coach Dawn, her third title in Columbia. She becomes just the third women's basketball coach to have 3 or more titles, joining Pat Summitt, Gina Auriemma, Tara Vanderveer, and Kim Mulkey. South Carolina becomes the 10th school to go undefeated and win a national title. By the way, 5 schools have done it. Connecticut has done it 6 times.
6 times.
6 times they went undefeated.
Stupid.
Wow.
Just stupid amounts of winning.
South Carolina down 10-0 to start the ball game, found themselves down 11 points on a couple of occasions. Beyond that, in the first quarter, down 7 at the break. But after that, began to really ramp up the defensive pressure. Outscored Iowa by 10 in the second quarter, by 6 in the third quarter, by 3 in the fourth, on their way to that 12-point victory, 38-0. Iowa shot 39.2% from the floor yesterday. Caitlin Clark got hers, but at times it was ugly. She scored 30 points. Remember, 18 of those 30 points came in the first quarter. Beyond that, South Carolina really locked down. She had 3 points, I believe, in the second quarter. And did she have any in the third? Can't remember for sure.
I have the full paper box score, actually.
Just Raven Johnson especially defending her. Others did as well, but Raven was, I thought, brilliant. Caitlin was also 5 of 13 from 3 yesterday. She did have 5 assists, but I think she typically has more than that because she led the nation in assists and scoring.
4 points in the third quarter.
4 in the third, okay. So
a very inefficient 4 points. 4 points on 7 shots.
Yeah, well, you were there, and what I saw, and again, I don't mean this to be critical. This is observational. Listen, she's a brilliant talent. There is zero doubt of that, and I think she can only get better. But I think she's one of those competitors because I've watched several of her games, and rarely are they down. But when they are, she seems like the kind of competitor that wants to take what I was joking with Terry earlier, a 10-point shot.
Yeah.
And I see it sometimes in quarterbacks in football. They want to throw a 21-point touchdown. And I'm like, dude, it only counts as 6. No matter how hard you're trying, no matter how hard you want to thread that needle. And I think the same of her. I know she can hit those 25-plus threes. I know it. But when you're taking too many or you're rushing it, you're only still going to get 3. And can you be more patient in the offense? And perhaps it was because Carolina, you and I talked about this a lot last week, denying some of those passing lanes. Mm-hmm. Do not let her pass the ball when she feels like she can. She made a few nice ones. That play Malaysia made, by the way, talk about effort.
Yeah.
But I do. I think Caitlin Clark is probably the type of competitor, and this is, again, I don't mean this in any way critically, because there's a lot of people out there. We all have friends that are like this. They hate losing more than they like winning, and I think she's one of those players. But at times, like, I've got to go do something. Mm-hmm. And like you said, inefficient. That's what Carolina wanted to do, make her frustrated and want to hit what I kept calling the 10-point shot.
Yeah, and that one about 25-footer that she threw up towards the end of the game when there was still a little bit of a chance. I think it might have been a 7-point game.
I said that went from 9 to 6 is what I want to say, but yeah somewhere in that range. Yeah,
it could have gotten it down to, 2 big possessions.
Yeah,
and they settled for a very tough, contested, tired jump shot.
Right.
And you could tell the legs weren't there on it. And I think at that point was when Iowa knew this wasn't happening.
Well, I was surprised, and I want to know what the feeling in the building was like. I told Tyler this earlier, Elijah. With 50 seconds to go, give or take, and obviously Carolina up 12, Lisa Bluter decided to stop. And South Carolina's not a great free throw shooting team. If they have a flaw, that's where it is. More than any other particular facet of the game, they're okay at free throws. They're not great. And yesterday they weren't very good. Barely
9-17.
Yeah, barely 50% yesterday. If I'm Iowa, I'm going to make Carolina get to the line, and I'm going to do all I can. If they go 1 of 2, 0 of 2, and if they go 2 of 2, so be it. I'm still going to go down and have my megastar try to knock down threes and at least give me 3 for 1 on a couple of trips and just see what happens. So that was probably the most surprising part of that. And I realize that's still a tall mountain to climb, but I think it's a mountain worth attempting to climb because you don't have another shot at it.
Well, that's the thing. The plan for Iowa, even though I thought offensively they ran a lot of really good stuff, they run a lot of awesome off-ball action to get their players open, because you know what they're going to do. Caitlin Clark's going to have the ball, and she's going to either drive, kick, or shoot, a Steph Curry-like shot. But there were still a couple of off-ball actions that were able to get Iowa cutters closer to the basket, and they were developing, really good looks. But once South Carolina made a couple adjustments defensively, especially one on Caitlin Clark, that I think really changed the game in terms of how they took away her left hand. She's right-handed, but her best three-point shooting move is to her left, and they were giving her right-handed drives because they would rather her drive and funnel them into the shot blockers than kick out or do that sidestep fadeaway three that she seemingly is automatic at when she's in her best rhythm. They took that out of the game, and when they were able to take that out, Iowa didn't have a counterpunch. My biggest critique of Bluter in that game as a coach was I didn't know of much of a counterpunch offensively. Defensively, they ran a 2-3. They went 1-3-1. They kind of just did a lot of incognito defenses for a few possessions in the second half. But offensively, once that punch was taken away, they had no counter. And I think that really hurt them a lot. Because I think at that point, South Carolina and Dawn and all of them, they realized that they've got this, right where I want it.
A little ironic if you consider last season's game where South Carolina maybe didn't have that counterpunch when some of what they did best was taken away against Iowa in the Final Four. Two big numbers that stood out to me, at least two big statistics that stood out to me here and to everybody else. The rebounding edge, South Carolina 51-29. You heard me right, 51-29 in rebounding. And again, the bench play, which we knew was spectacular, showed it once again. South Carolina, 37 points off the bench, including Carolina's leading scorer, Tessa Johnson, with 19 points. Iowa's bench, 0. Just a remarkable performance for Coach Dawn's team. Cut 8 here, Elijah. This is Dawn Staley on the significance of this, her program's third national title.
Well, it means that we have quietly have done things, in my opinion, the right way. We find the right pieces to help us. We really do things the right way. We're very disciplined in how we approach basketball. I am one that I'm forever indebted to basketball, so I'm always going to take care of it. I'm always going to make sure that our players are respectful. I'm always going to make sure that they know the history of our game. I want to make sure they are always respectful to our opponents. And when you do it that way, in return, you have success. You have success in the wins column and very little, disappointment in the loss column. And I don't think that's talked about enough, what we've been able to do, and I don't know why. And I really don't care why. We're going to keep doing what we're doing the right way. Whether we are the popular or unpopular successful programs in the country. So we're going to keep doing that way.
Good stuff from Coach Dawn. And she's right. And now, Elijah, look, she'll take it as a challenge, I'm sure, and the players that are with her now and the ones they will recruit in the future. How can South Carolina become what Tennessee and Connecticut were? And again, I say this only from the era in which it happened, because Pat Summitt is amazing. But when Pat was doing it, there wasn't a lot of competition around her program. And she was able to really just get the best players and just utterly dominate. And then we talked about it. Gino has 6 undefeated teams that won a national title. So he was able to do it in an era when there was a little more buzz and popularity and, dare I say, even a little bit of parity. But you look at what Dawn is doing now, and you look at what Caitlin Clark has just done, and you look at a name like Juju Watkins out on the West Coast, and I could go on and on, what Angel Reese has done. There is more parity now. Schools are going to start to spend more money on this sport because there's going to be something in it for them. And can Dawn begin to, and how is it measured? Well, you weren't Pat. Well, you weren't Gino. That now becomes one of the stories around this program because they will go into next year as the #1 team in the country. There's zero doubt of that. I don't even know who #2 is going to be. I don't really care. Probably Connecticut. But South Carolina is so bleeping loaded with talent for next season, man. It's frightening how good they can be again. And then you say to yourself, well, can you be better than undefeated national champion? No, but you can go do it again.
Yeah, and I don't think that's completely out of the realm of possibility. I mean, look, they're bringing in the #1 high school player in the country, the Gatorade High School Player of the Year in Joyce Edwards, and then they're bringing in another McDonald's All-American. They're bringing in a player who didn't play this year. She reclassified,
right?
And basically, you know, it was nursing an injury.
Yeah,
but at Hill Tech, and look, you might even get a player in the transfer portal, maybe. But then I'm looking at the roster right now, trying to find. Just playing the numbers game, right? Like you're losing Camilla, Sakima's gone, so that is 1, 2, 3, 4, like what 9 spots that are already coming back, and then you're adding 2. Even if you add another spot, I don't know how. Like managing minutes is going to be the hardest thing.
Right.
Like this is such an embarrassment of riches that Dawn's biggest obstacle next year is figuring out who to put on the floor. And how many minutes and divvying them up. And, you know, I know she's not worried about keeping players happy because I think they've developed a culture where it's not about the minute accumulation.
Right.
I think it's at this point, it's, hey, what type of lineups can I throw out there? What type of looks can I give people? And that's going to take a while to figure out just because you have so many good players at different positions. They could easily do it again.
We'll have a lot more from Dawn and a little bit from Caitlin Clark, too. Plus, I want to get to y'all's phone calls on the other side after the integrated media headlines of the day. So we'll come back around to that again. Carolina 87-75 to go 38-0 on the season and clinched